long course, short course, and then you can all. Hello, hello. Welcome to our Wednesday, Wildcat Wednesday Ask a Coach live stream with Jill Patterson. Welcome, Jill. Whoop, you're muted. I think you're muted. You got to unmute.
Oh, no, hold on. No,
Hold on.
You're good.
All right,
Try now.
try it now.
Okay, can you hear me?
She's good. That was us. That was us. All right, welcome, friends. Jill is here with us. Thank you for joining. I see we already have some folks popping in, just finishing up their Wildcat ride. John's here. Beth, KJ wants to say hi to her coach. Beth says hi, Jill and Alex. Sheila says good evening. Welcome, everyone. I see we've got folks on YouTube, and also we're streaming on Facebook. Surprise. So either one's fine. I'm just going to introduce my guest tonight. Coach Jill Patterson is joining us. We'll be doing a live stream Q&A talking about all things cycling, training, and racing, as much as we can talk about in an hour. And then at that point, you're on your own to contact Jill about any other specifics you want to discuss and possibly some coaching. So, but I'm just going to do a quick bio here, introduce Jill, let you know all of her accolades, and then we'll get into it. How does that sound, Jill?
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So Coach Jill started road biking while living in Japan as an English teacher. We actually have that in common. We both lived in Japan as English teachers and started riding there, which is a pretty cool connection. She eventually joined a Japanese women's team, and that is where she did UCI stage races. With that team, she did UCI stage races in the United States, China, and Thailand. And then once back in the U.S., Jill turned her focus to Grand Fondos and gravel, becoming the UCI and GFNY World Champion and a 3-time USA Cycling Grand Fondo National Champion. So we are talking to a world and national champion here, folks. This is big. You're getting the tips from a world champ. That doesn't happen every day. KJ says Coach Jill is my favorite coach. Thank you, KJ.
Thank you.
All right. Jill started her coaching business in 2017 and has been coaching full-time since 2022. She loves working with her athletes to deliver customized programs to help them achieve their goals, whether increasing distance and power, getting on a podium, multi-day camps, or crushing local group rides. Jill is USA Cycling Power Certified, Training Peaks Level 2 Certified, and USA Cycling Level 2 Coach Trained. So, that's what I'm saying, folks. This is big deal here. You're getting the info, the inside scoop. If you want to learn more about Jill after this live stream, you can check out her website, jillpattersoncycling.com, and follow her on social media at Jill Patterson Cycling. So that is it. I see more people are joining us. Hi, Butch. Hi, Reggie. Angeline's here. She says she's going to Japan in a couple weeks and would love recommendations of where to ride.
Ooh. Man, pretty much anywhere. It's like super safe there. They're very considerate drivers. I love it. Just remember, you're riding on the left-hand side of the road.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you got to remember that. We did that the other night in Zwift, McCurry Islands, actually. Somebody mentioned we're on the left, and I thought, oh, that's cool. I didn't even realize that. All right, so we sent out a questionnaire before this live stream, and we'll be going through some of those questions first. Jill will touch on various questions people asked ahead of time, and then as we are going, you can drop your own questions in the chat. So if you have something specific you want to ask Jill, drop it in our live stream chat, and we will get to it as we go. We're going to start with some more basic type questions that apply to kind of anyone, a little bit more sort of broad questions, and then we'll get into specific training questions that people have. So again, drop those questions in the chat. I will keep track of them and we'll answer them as we go. Some quick data just from our questionnaire before we get into the Q&A. We had 86% of our folks who submitted questions are road cyclists. We have 80% are gravel cyclists, and 80% do indoor riding. So a lot of road, gravel, indoor virtual type riders. Most people wanted to know about workouts, training plans, and nutrition, as well as endurance riding. And then we had a group that wanted to know about base training and race prep. So I'm going to turn over the mic. Well, I have my mic, but I'm now going to turn over the Q&A to Jill, and she'll get us started on some of the questions that people submitted ahead of time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Alex. So there were lots of questions, and I would love to answer all of them. In the interest of time, I cannot answer all of the questions, so I chose a couple that I think could apply to everyone that would be helpful for everyone. And then we will definitely get into the more specific training and fueling questions, but honestly, those are kind of the hardest to address because they're very specific to the individual and what you're training for. You know, someone who's training for criteriums is going to need a very different training plan than someone who's training for a 100-mile gravel race. Okay, so I can make some generalizations, but I cannot get into nitty-gritty specifics. Okay, so let's start with the applies to everyone question. Okay, first one was just winter apparel. I think now is a very good time to talk about this. So
Yes.
you have lots of options out there. Honestly, the technology in clothing has like really improved. So pretty much anything you get, it's probably going to be good. But I do recommend wool, as much wool as you can do for your base layers. And you want to layer. I can't recommend this enough because the worst thing that can happen in winter is you sweat and or you get wet. The minute you get wet, if it's cold, you will be miserable. So if you have on a thick jacket and you do a hard interval and you start sweating, you can't really do much about it. You're stuck with that thick jacket and then you just feel miserable for the rest of the ride. So if you have layers and then maybe a really big, this is the time of year when I use my extra big handlebar bag, You can maybe take off those layers, stick them up your back. If they don't fit in your pocket, put them in your bar bag. A couple helpful hints. Sometimes I actually bring a change of base layer because that is the one thing that I might sweat and get wet, especially if I'm doing a hill climb in the winter or even in the summer where it gets like to freezing at the top of that hill and I'm sweaty. I will get freezing cold going down the hill. So before I go down, I change into a dry layer. So you can do that mid-ride. Another touch point, gloves. That's a huge one. People sweat through their gloves and then their hands get cold. I often bring 2 pairs of gloves on rides. Sometimes different weights. I'll have a lighter weight and a heavier weight, and you can switch between them.
I actually do that
I
as
recommend
well.
winter shoes, getting them a little bit bigger, like one size bigger than you can fit in thick socks, because really you could, if your shoes are tight, it doesn't matter how much, like how many shoe covers or how thick the shoes are, they're still tight and they're disrupting the circulation. You're going to have cold feet. So you need air, you need that buffer around the shoe. So a slightly bigger shoe. You don't necessarily need a winter shoe. I just have a big size, extra size, big summer shoe. I wear thick socks. I put toe covers, then I put shoe covers over them, and they work well. I've even cut holes in my winter shoes to give, if you have like a bunion or something or a pressure point, then that like you take that away and then you won't get that like frost damaged.
Hmm.
Okay.
I like the
Wind.
different gloves. I like the packing different gloves. I do that. I bring a lightweight and a heavyweight because, like you said, if you're climbing and then later descending, you'll get really hot and then you'll get cold. So I often do that. I put on my lightweight gloves to climb and then I switch and put the heavyweight ones on.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's
that's a
great.
good one.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Keep in mind, they always talk about keeping the core warm, and you can get like a windproof layer for the core. That's very helpful. Windproof panels are great. But I learned about myself, I actually will overheat if my core is too warm. What I need is to make my arms and legs super warm. My core can actually be cool and I'm comfortable. So I'm saying this because everyone is different. And if I had just followed the logic of keep your core warm, I would have just been miserable all these years. So think outside of the box, figure out what works for you. And then also, I really recommend keeping your neck and your head warm. These are touch points. Like you put on a necker, really extra thick necker, you're immediately like cozy and warm. Same with the head thing under your helmet.
Do you use any specific do you use specific uh like f- uh like wool ones or any type of specific fabric for your neck gaiters or your hats, or is it just kind of like generic, like a spandexy kind of stretchy one?
Yeah, a spandexy, stretchy, like ski gaiter thing for the neck, honestly, fleece type of stuff.
Or is it dry fit or not really? Like, do you want it to be something that's going to wick away, or do you want it to be a little bit heavier? Like, what do you prefer? Like a thin
For
one or a thick
my
one?
neck, I don't really sweat on my neck, so I've never thought of like getting wicking fabric
Okay.
there. I literally just use what I used for skiing,
Hmm.
like a thick necker thing. It's not wicking at all, honestly. I actually have, it's like a balaclava. I really like it. It's the head thing and the neck thing, so I can kind of just have my whole, everything but my face covered, and I can bring it up above my mouth. Another thing, like Vaseline or chapstick on your skin, or like I think dermatome, like you can get specific skin rubs that'll help to keep the skin from getting like windburned.
Do you typically do a lot of riding out in the like this time of year? Are you riding outside when it's really cold, 20 degrees or less? Or are you riding inside when it's really cold like this?
When typically, yes, I would be riding outside. This year I'm riding only inside.
Okay. So you're used to riding in this cold weather and bundling up and layering. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I've done
that's
rides where
tough.
my water bottles have frozen. So I've definitely. Oh, another great hint. I've brought hot chocolate on my rides. So you have 2 bottle holders. One, I'll put liquid, like regular fuel or whatever. The other, I'll have like a little thermos and I'll fill it with hot chocolate. And that is so amazing mid-ride.
I've heard that before actually, to take something, um, take like a hot drink with you. Some people will also like put it in their back pocket just to keep them warm.
Mm-hmm.
And are you, when you're riding this time of year, are you riding road, gravel, mountain? What's your typical training ride for winter?
All I,
All.
I I don't really have a typical, whatever the conditions warrant that day.
So somebody's asking, Blue Crush asked, what gloves specifically are you using? Like a brand? Do you have a brand that you like or a style that you like for this time of year?
So I have tried a bunch of different brands. I've tried a bunch of different styles. My biggest mistake was getting gloves that are a little too tight. You want to kind of get gloves that are almost a little too big because those are going to be warmer.
Hmm.
And I do, my hands don't get that cold. My feet get super cold. My hands don't. So I can just get 5-finger gloves, and most days that is enough. My favorite pair of gloves is a pair of ski gloves. They're not even made for cycling, and they're like long, and they're just like, but I can shift, I can do the handling that I need. I have tried those lobster gloves that are like that. Those do work. I do like them. I know people who have used the bar cover mitt things, and
The
that
pogies and
works
stuff.
too.
Yeah. But you don't use those. You're not a
I have
peg.
never used those, no.
Okay. Um, Butch, we'll get to your question about training volume a little bit later. So hang tight. I wrote that one down. And then, Angeline said, yeah, the hot drink is great. Did a metric century outdoors and brought a cafe mocha. It was a game changer. I'd actually never thought about doing that. Sounds like a good idea, though, bringing a warm drink. So do you ever wear like double layer gloves, thin under a thicker winter glove, or are you just wearing a single glove?
I just wear a single glove. I know people who have worn the double gloves. I also know people who have gotten those gloves that have the heating packs put in them, or like the plug-in things. Like they're all great options. Basically, you just need to figure out what works for you and make sure you're not sweating in the gloves.
Hmm. That's a good point. Like anytime, the rule is you don't want to be sweating a lot. Any other questions about winter apparel or winter riding? Drop them in the chat and we'll get to them as we go. Do you have anything else specific about winter riding or winter training to add? I'm just looking at the questions here.
So I would add in winter, just be very aware of ice. Like right now where we are, that all it takes is one small patch of ice to ruin an entire day. And so if you're in a deep freeze where things have not melted and they're refreezing over and over like we are now, in my opinion, it's just not worth that. I did hit ice once. It was like, all the perfect conditions. It was like in November. It wasn't even freezing. It was like it was early morning, and there was a shadow at a construction site that was leaking water, and it was around a bend in a road. So all these like things factored in, and the minute I hit that ice, just down. There's nothing I could do. Luckily, I was okay, but just be very, very careful about ice in winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Especially if you're riding in any shaded areas on pavement too, right? Like descending specifically.
Yeah.
KJ wanted to mention that you don't have to wear cycling branded gloves. Save your cash. It sounds like you, Jill, don't necessarily wear cycling branded apparel or have any specific brand that you wear. You just sort of figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I've gotten stuff at thrift stores. I get off-brand like ski things. I get, whatever works. I've gotten cheapy gloves from Amazon, like off-brand. They're great.
It's funny. I have a cheap pair of gloves that I've had for years, and they're the warmest gloves I have. And even that they have like little holes in them, and they're still really warm compared to all these expensive gloves that all these companies sell. So it's just like interesting how that works out. Um, all right. Do you want to move on to the next topic? If we don't have any more winter questions, we'll move on to the next one. If you have winter questions that you want to ask still, you can drop them in and we can circle back in a little bit.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go on to this next question. This is a really quick one. I'm not going to discuss it in depth, but it was a very good question. How to choose a bike, or are all brands the same? All brands are not the same, okay? Um, certain bikes have slightly different fits. And for example, if you have a long torso compared to your legs, you might be better off in certain brands, and other brands might not work for you. So the best thing to do is to get a fit first, or go to a fitter, get their recommendation. Before you go, make sure they are aware that maybe you don't have a bike, and that you need to get your fit specifics, and you're looking for a bike, and that you want recommendations. Some fitters might not be able to recommend brands, others will be very familiar with different brands. Go to different bike shops that sell different brands. Do be aware that, of course, they're going to want to push the brands they sell. Okay, so have that in mind. And I just recommend go to several different shops. Just collect a bunch of different opinions, do your research, and know that not all bikes are the same. And also, what are you going to use it for? Are you going to use it for fun endurance rides, or are you going to use it for racing? Because each bike has different personalities there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a lot more I could say, but for the interest of time, I think that's it.
What was that question specifically? Do you remember that
It
somebody
just
asked?
says how to choose a bike, or are all brands the same?
Yeah, that is a really tricky one.
Yeah.
As a person who works at a bike shop, I'll say that they're so different for different reasons. And so, like Jill said, trying all different bikes, if you have the time and the ability to spend, a few weeks just going to different shops, or even asking friends if you can try their bikes out, to do actual rides. Because it's hard if you go to a shop, you don't necessarily get to ride the bike. I mean, you can like test ride in a parking lot, but that's not the same as riding. So if you're able to borrow a bike, right, would that be something that you'd recommend? If somebody's able to rent a bike, is that a good way to maybe try to figure it out,
Oh
or
yeah.
borrow
I
from a
I
friend?
had an athlete, she was buying, like, I think it was a new gravel bike, and she was able to test several out at different stores. And she was so happy that she tested them out, because it made a huge difference in her final decision.
Yeah. I always kind of, well, maybe some stores do this. If you could rent a bike, that we did actually do this at one point at our store, and I don't know if stores still do it, but you rent a bike and use it for a week before you decide what you want to buy. Like that would be the way to go, I think. I'm not sure how easy that is to do nowadays, but yeah, for sure you want to like know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
Reggie says yes, it's key to get at least one fit. Do you have any tips for fits or recommendations of not necessarily like fitters? I know you actually work with a fitter, so feel free to talk about that person. But what would you say in terms of fit? Like, what's important about a fit? Why should people get a fit?
Mm, mm, mm. Um, fits can unlock potential. With just a centimeter moved, you can drastically change your ride and the feeling. Okay, so if you're looking for improving your watts and your speed, you might get free speed with a fit. If you have imbalances in your body, or different leg lengths or something like that, or pain on the bike, that's a great time to get a fit. As you change as a rider over time, every 2-3 years, I recommend people get a new fit, because bodies can get more flexible, they can get less flexible, you can get stronger in different ways. Your riding style changes. If you get a new bike, get a new fit, technology changes. Now we have like shorter crank arms. Well, if you change your crank arm, you have to change your saddle and your reach. Like it's all interrelated. And a good fitter will know those trends, and they will stay up on that and be able to help you as it applies to you as an individual. And as far as a good fitter, I would go to a well-trained fitter. Go to a fitter who, like, that's what they do. Okay, not that they just work at the bike shop and they sell bikes and then they happen to fit on the side. Like, you could get a good fit that way. It might be a cheaper fit too, if that's your budget, but someone who really has focused on fitting, that I highly recommend that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with you on that one. And we've both been to the same bike fitter, and it's an amazing bike fitter. So I'll just give a shout out to Chris Richardson Bike Fit.
Yeah. Yep. I second that. Everyone who goes loves Chris Richardson. We recommend going. His wait list is probably about 6 months at
Yeah.
this point. Get on it. You won't regret it.
Yeah, yeah, one of the best decisions I've made. And I don't know if this question came up, but something that I've heard from a lot of people is shoes and saddle. Those tend to be two things that people struggle with on the bike. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time to get into it, but if you have any recommendations or tips for choosing a saddle or shoes other than talk to a fitter, because I know you've struggled with shoes yourself over the years, and I have too. But if there's anything that you've learned that you would like to share, maybe that could be helpful.
Oh, that we could talk for the rest of the hour about that.
Or
I
is
would say your best bet, talk to a fitter. A
Okay.
good fitter is going to help. Like, they have the saddle mapping. They can look at your shoes. Like, are you a high volume, low volume shoe? Sometimes like people get numb feet. That might be because the shoes are too tight or too big. Insoles are very important. You know, you might need custom made, or you might want to get like a special type of insole. And the cleat position. I mean, there's just so much going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And it's interesting how it's all related, because your pain on your saddle could be related to your feet and vice versa, right? So again, like a fitter can help you figure that out. KJ says, fitters can give you free watts, comfort, and more endurance. Yes, that is and power. Question from Blue Crush. What are you looking for when you're test riding a bike? So if you're back to purchasing a new bike, or if you are thinking about upgrading or something like that, what would you want to pay attention to when you're test riding?
Man, I mean, great question. I think it's probably different for everyone, but I would say the most important thing is that it matches your riding personality. For example, I'll give you the example of my gravel bike.
like
My
that.
first gravel bike was kind of like an endurance fit. And as long as it was going straight or downhill, it was awesome. But as soon as I went to turn it or maneuver it, it was like just a little sluggish because it just wasn't made for that. And I realized that my personality as a gravel rider, I really like the lighter bikes that are going to handle a little bit more. So even though that was a great bike, it was not a great bike for me. And then when I tried a more lively race style gravel bike, I was like, this fits my riding personality. Like I could tell this is how I want to ride my bike. So you definitely want to challenge it. Don't ride just straight. You know, do some turns, do some handling, get it up to speed, accelerate, brake quickly, like put it through the ringer and see how it feels. And you will know. You know, they say certain things in life, like you'll know it when you see it or you feel it, you'll know it.
Yeah, that is a very true statement, I think. Like, you'll know it when you feel it. And it's true. There's a difference between a race bike and an endurance bike for road, gravel, mountain. And that's really important if you're talking to a shop or looking at a used bike or whatever, that you know what that bike is made for, right? Like what the focus is of that bike, because that's going to determine, like how it handles or how it feels in certain terrain, which is hard if you're not able to test ride it on that terrain. That's the tricky part. Beth says, Chris Richardson is amazing. His bike fits have made such a difference for me. I go annually to update my fit and have added a semi-annual update for tweaks to my setup. That's a really good, I know Beth is very in tune with that kind of stuff, but going every, once a year, every few years, like you said, Jill, right? Because things change over time. And so what feels good now may not feel the same 3 years from now. That's really important. All right. I think we're going to move on from this one, but if you have any other questions about bikes, fits, etc., feel free to drop them in and we'll circle back. And we're looking good.
Okay.
We're at about 30 minutes now, about halfway through.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time. There was another one I wanted to address. I don't think we have time because I really want to get to kind of the training questions and the fueling
Hmm.
because those are some huge topics, and I know that I think pretty much everyone wants to hear about that. And these are the ones that are hard to talk about because it's kind of generalized. So I want to make sure we have enough time.
Hmm.
So, okay. So I'm going to start with this question. This question basically opens the door to a
Here we go.
lot of stuff. Okay, and we'll see what we get when we open the door. Okay, so I love doing endurance rides, but I also want to be faster and stronger on shorter rides. It's hard to do both.
Ah, yes.
Very well said.
How do I do it
And
all,
the door
Coach
is
Jill?
open.
Tell us. What are your secrets?
Okay. Okay, so
How can I be a good crit racer as well as a good Fondo rider?
yeah, well, you're never going to be full potential at both, okay?
Mm.
These are like the opposite end of the spectrum. If you want to be your best at like a long endurance ride, you're not going to be your best at a crit. If you want to be the best at a crit, you're not going to be long endurance. So what we when I think of coaching and riding your bike, I think of two things. These are the two very basic things I'm training. I am training volume or time, like I'm lengthening out the time you can hold it, the power, or I'm training intensity. So we're either making it longer or we're making it higher.
Hmm.
That's it. Okay, very easy.
You're doing this or you're doing that. You're not. So like if you're trying to do it all, then like you just like you're not going to get anything, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We only have so much energy, so much time. So if we go up high here and we build the power really high, that means that we're taking energy away from building it this way. But if we do all the energy here, like we're just out on our bike hours and hours every day, just doing those endurance rides, that's tiring. We're not going to have energy for the high power. So you have to make some choices.
Mhm.
Okay. You can still be very good at both things, but you're never going to be like maximum good at both things, if that makes sense.
KJ says, "Want to bet?" Actually, she didn't say that, but I'm waiting for her to say that. Just kidding. What you're saying makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
and you're not talking about an endurance rider sprinting at the end of a race. You're talking about somebody who wants to be sprint focused versus endurance focused, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm talking really the extremes, which most people aren't living necessarily at those extremes. I don't think many of our listeners are pure crit racers, right?
Mhm.
Those are like 30 to 45-minute all out, balls out, like sprinting races. So, because we're not focusing on that, like we can be very good, you know, 3 to 6 hour ride racers. We can be very good like 100-mile gravel racers. That those things do sort of fit together. Okay, now another thing to think about is we're building time and intensity. So the other thing that is not fitness related but can really improve your riding are the cadence management, the tactics, the fueling, like how you shift your bike, like the handling, all of that. So that is sort of the third thing I'm training, though it's not like the fitness. For fitness, I'm dividing it into the time and the intensity. And then the extra kind of icing on the cake are all those extras that can really add to that. Okay. Now, when we're thinking time and intensity, when I'm making a training schedule every week, I'm thinking of my rides as three different types. We have what I'm going to call easier, we have what I call harder, and then we have like this gray ride in the middle. Okay. Most times of the year, I want you're either riding hard or you're riding easy. Most times of the year, I do not want you riding gray because gray means you're just cementing the skills you already have. Okay. You're not getting better and you're not resting. So you're just sort of like there in this gray zone. You're not moving. Now, the one time I would say these gray rides, these medium rides where they're not really hard, but they're not really easy, when you're building your base, that is a good time for a lot of gray rides. Okay, that is the one time I'm like, if you want to go do like 4 gray rides this week, fine, we're in the base building. But if we're in like, we're building intensity, we're getting closer to a race or an event, and we're going for very specific things, then I don't want you riding gray. When you ride hard, I want you like really focused so you can ride hard and hit those intervals. And then to do that, you have to go really easy the other days.
Yeah.
Most people, if you're planning your week, the hard rides, you only have 2, maybe 3 in you per week. And some weeks you don't even have 2. Okay. For the macro multi-week schedule in general, I do 3 weeks where you're ramping up. So each of those weeks would have 2 or 3 hard rides. And then 1 week where you're really like just easy rides.
I think
That's your recovery week.
I think this is something that people have a really hard time with. We talk about this on a lot of our DKWTS virtual rides. Some people think that in order to get into shape or train properly, they need to be going hard, consistently hard, and they're not necessarily recovering or taking days off or having those easy days, easy weeks. So it's interesting. You're talking about not just easy days, but also easy weeks, right? Like
Yes.
you have you say macro meaning on a smaller scale, but then also the micro meaning on a larger scale, right? You're thinking about
Yeah. So I have like the weekly scale, and then the monthly, and then like the yearly.
Mhm.
So yeah, on the monthly, every month it would be 3 weeks build, 1 week much less, like taper recovery. Though you could, some people 2 weeks build, 1 week recovery, that is totally fine. That for certain people, I would definitely recommend that. You can still get a lot of growth, and that growth happens in the recovery. And people might argue, oh, but I can go hard. I can go hard for 4 days in a row. Well, no, you can't. You think you're going hard, but you're just tired and it feels like you're going hard. You're not really going hard. If you were really going hard, you would not be able to go to hard more than 2 days in a row like that.
So is it go hard? So one thing that I've heard for training is like make your hard and make your easy, right? That's what you were just saying. Like you want to be hard and easy and not in this like weird like hardish easy zone, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're kind of saying?
Now, there are exceptions to this. Like I have riders who are doing stage races or like crit races for a week every day. So at some point in their training, I will want them to do hard, back to back, just so they're used to that. But at that point, I'm not building up their power. Like they're not gaining any power, they're gaining durability. Okay. So before I go to that durability, what I'm going to do is focus on the power and give them like a really hard workout, then 1 or 2 days of rest, then a really hard workout. So every time they go hard, they're going really hard. And then when we go switch to durability, I'm not expecting them to hit those metrics, and because they can't, they're going to be too fatigued, but that's a different thing we're going for.
And just a note while Jill's talking, it's this kind of thing is so specific for each individual that you don't want to take something she's saying and try to apply it to yourself. It's important that if you really do want to train seriously for something and focus on training for an event, that you do talk to a coach so that you're not just like making stuff up and then possibly like doing the wrong thing, right? Like you're speaking in more like general terms because it's going to be very specific for each individual, right?
And I'll give you a very good example. So when I studied to be a coach, I studied like all the very traditional stuff, and it was all like, okay, winter is base building season, then you specialize, and then you race in the summer. And then I started coaching like these ultra endurance athletes and gravel racers where their races are not the typical. It's not what, these books were written for. These books were written for pros on the pro peloton. It's a very different thing. And what I realized is that the riders, the gravel riders, the endurance riders, they're basically doing their base in the summer. They're doing it the opposite because they're doing all these really long distance events. They have to peak. They have to recover. And so they're getting a lot of this endurance base miles through their events. And then come winter, why would I throw them into more of that? So winter for them is actually the time when we might do intensity. We might do like VO2, we might do anaerobic, like, and that's exactly the opposite of what a lot of programs say. But why? Like, I'm not going to have my athlete do the same thing year round, year after round, like year after year. That they're not going to grow, they're going to stagnate. So you have to kind of think outside the box, and that's why I'm bringing this up, is like what you read might not apply to you.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a few questions here. First one from Reggie. What is easy exactly? Is it zone 1, zone 2? Should I be following heart rate or power? What's the metric?
Great question. So kind of depends on the person. If you don't have much of a training background, an endurance ride might be kind of hard for you. Okay, so I consider that. But once you get up to a certain level, then a 1 hour endurance ride is probably not too hard. Like, I would consider a 1 hour endurance ride easy, maybe even up to 2 hours, depending on the person and the volume they're doing. You can throw in some cadence work. That's always good to do on an endurance day. I would not bring it to tempo.
Mm-hmm.
Tempo is great for a base building period, because that's kind of, tempo is almost a gray zone. So no, like zone 1 is recovery, zone 2 is endurance. Those are the two zones that I consider easy. You can throw in some cadence work. You might be able to do something like quick jumps. You focus on skills. These easy days are great days to focus on handling. If you are especially fatigued, instead of going by power, I often, after a really hard ride, the next day, I will tell my athlete, do a 1 hour heart rate ride by heart rate endurance. And sometimes, because they're so fatigued, their power might actually end up being in recovery, but I'm okay with that. There are certain times when I'd rather them go by heart rate than power. And that's also, it's kind of hard to like specify when and why, but there are times when heart rate might be better than power.
So when you mention tempo, you're saying that would be zone 3?
Yes.
Okay, because when we do our Tuesday night sprint rides for DKWTS, we talk about zone 1, easy super recovery, zone 2, a little bit more active recovery, zone 3, tempo, zone 4 is getting up into your aerobic, and then anaerobic and VO2. So we do talk about that a little bit for folks, but it's hard because some people understand that in terms of power, other people understand that in terms of heart rate or just feel. But I think what you're saying is zone 3, that middle zone, people sort of will get stuck in that zone thinking they need to just ride this like tempo constantly, constantly, constantly. And really it's like you're actually going from like the lower zones to the higher zones when you're training. But you're saying that tempo is a good base training zone?
When I hit tempo the hardest is usually when I'm training base.
Okay.
Yeah. Once we have a very good base, and think of it as a pyramid, the bigger the base, the higher the pyramid can go. Once we've built that tempo base, then I'm not usually, like, as we're getting closer to race season, I'm not having people dabble in tempo too much. Of course, it is very event specific. Someone who's doing like 100-mile gravel event, we might do a bit more tempo than someone who's doing like 100-mile Grand Fondo.
Funny you should mention Fondo, because we've had a couple questions about climbing. I don't know if you're ready to go in that direction yet.
Yeah, let's hit that question, okay?
Okay.
So, one of the questions was how to train for long 3 or more kilometer challenging 7% climbs when you don't have any climbs that are that long or steep near you. But you do have an indoor trainer. Okay, so this is a very specific climb. This is a long climb. This is a steep climb. Okay, now there are short climbs and not so steep climbs, but basically when you think of climbs, I want you to think of the total time that you're on that climb. So maybe your local climbs, it's like 5 minutes, okay? Or maybe you're doing this 3-kilometer longer climb, so it's like 30 minutes or longer. Now,
Hamburg, climbing Hamburg.
Right. So
if anybody knows that.
the time that you're going to be pushing hard on this climb. So we basically need to train you up to do an interval that long. Okay. So if your local climbs are 5 minutes, you need to work on that like 5-minute zone. If you want to climb a 30-minute hill, you need to work up to 30 minutes. Next, you need to match your power and cadence to the climb. And this is very grade dependent. This might not be something you will know immediately, but if you can do a little recon, it's super helpful to go find a climb of a similar grade. So this person wants to know 3 kilometers at 7%. So I would say, okay, let's find a climb at 7%, at least 30 seconds long. You know, we need like 30 seconds, 1 minute. Go up as easy as you possibly can in your easiest gear up this climb. We want to see the power or the perceived exertion or the heart rate. Okay, when you're going up as easy as you possibly can, because imagine if you do it for 30 seconds, now you have to do it for 30 minutes, right? So what is the base power where you could, if you maintain this power, you're not going to fall off your bike? Look at your cadence too, and let's say it's like 150 watts at 70 RPM. Okay, that's like the easiest you could possibly go without falling up this climb. So now we know, okay, for 30 minutes, you need to be able to put out 150 watts at 70 RPM. And then we would train you up to that. Okay. And maybe you're like, oh, no problem. I could do 180 watts for that. Okay, well, then we raise the cadence a bit, you know, then we can play with it. We have a little bit of wiggle room. But basically, everyone thinks, oh, I'm training for hills. Let me choose the hilliest course with lots of elevation. No, 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 no. Like
Interesting.
that is like the worst thing you could do with in at least where we are. Because these hilly courses, you have like a 30-second climb and then like a 1-minute climb and then like a 2-minute climb, and you have nothing sustained. That's actually worse. If you want to target long climbs, choosing an undulating course with a lot of ups and downs is probably the worst training that you could do for that. Choosing a flat course is far better. And I know you're like, flat climbing, what?
But you want sustained power.
You have the same power. You can do it at a constant pace without those undulating changes, and that's what we need. So indoor training is actually amazing for hill climbing because it, like, you don't get a rest. You're constantly at this pace, so you can match your power, you can match your cadence or heart rate or perceived exertion. And then another thing you can do is, if that climb is really steep, your bike is going to change. That's going to change the angle of your body. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of it on your indoor trainer, I would put some books and raise that indoor trainer 3 to 6 inches, the front end, and then train on that. So your body is literally in the same position.
That's a really good point. Somebody, we have a couple climbing questions relating to that. Somebody asked, Willis asked, what is the best climbing drivetrain gear ratio? I'm in the Appalachian area. So
honestly, as many gears as you can get. Like bigger cassette is better, up to a point, you know. But like when I have my athletes doing like these climbing things in Europe where you are on 7-9% grades, it's like, if you can get it on your bike, get it on your bike.
So you want it to be easier. You want to be able to climb easier because then you can go longer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that I find when I'm riding with people who are learning to climb or don't climb as much, or maybe even just never really like trained specifically for endurance climbing, some people will mash up the hill, meaning they're in a heavy gear and they're spinning at a low cadence and putting down a lot of power, and other people will spin at a higher cadence. Is there what would you suggest? Like, is there like an ideal cadence or an ideal sort of area you want to be when you're doing a sustained, say, 30-minute climb at, we'll use that 7% grade, I think is what you said?
So to some degree, everyone is different and it depends on the person. My athletes, basically, I see 2 types in the athletes I train. I see kind of like the muscular dominant, and then I see the cardiovascular dominant. So essentially, I am a muscular dominant. When I fatigue, my cadence will go down and I will naturally mash. The majority of my athletes are like that. Most people that I've seen, you will rely on your muscles more than the heart and lungs. Every so often I have an athlete where as they fatigue, they're actually spinning faster. because they have such a well-developed cardiovascular system. So those people might be better off spinning up the climb. Now, you need to know your natural tendencies and what might be easier for you, right? And that's going to help set your cadence. I would say cadence at least around 80 is good, okay? If you're below 80 for a very long climb, that's going to burn your muscles. And by the end of 30 minutes, your muscles are going to be taxed. So that's why we don't want it to be too low of a cadence, because you're burning out your muscles. Too high of a cadence on a climb is probably not going to happen. But like if you're spinning at 95 up the climb, that's too high. Don't do that, okay? So I would say 80 to 90 would be ideal. But again, as you fatigue, you might drop. It is what it is. It's important to be aware of what you're doing and then also to train what you don't do. Okay, so just because I perform that low cadence and I'm comfortable, I'm going to force myself to do higher cadence on a climb because I actually do want to develop my cardiovascular system more, right? Like that's a weak point. I could develop that more. So train your weakness, and then in reality, when you get out there, ride to your strengths.
Now, another question we have, is it better to stay seated while climbing or stand, or is it dependent on the grade, the climb, how long, your muscle development, etc.?
Yeah, it totally depends. So again, most athletes, they don't feel good standing as good. So most athletes are going to do it seated, but I have had some athletes where by default they want to stand. Like the way their physiology is, the way they've trained, like they actually do better standing for the majority of the hill climb. And you know what? Like, yeah, we're going to train that seated and we're going to try to develop that, but have at it. If you want to stand on the climb, stand on the climb. And these athletes tend to have very powerful glutes and or strong upper bodies, and that's why. Now,
do you notice that runners, like people who come from endurance running, tend to stand more? Is that something you notice, or is it just doesn't have a correlation?
No, I haven't seen a correlation for that, though. They have very strong cardiovascular, so they might not be the mashers. They might be the spinners. Now, I definitely recommend, if you're like, oh, I'm fine seated, I can do all climbs seated, train your weakness, train that standing, because on a very long climb, or if you're very fatigued, standing can actually act as a way to refresh yourself and like recovery. And if you have not trained it, it's not going to be recovery. It's going to be hard and it's going to be exhausting, and you're going to be stuck. Like you're going to be climbing this hill seated, desperate because you're like, I'm so tired. And then you try to stand to mix things up. It's not going to feel good. So if you can train your standing to the point where you can stand for a minute and stay standing for a minute, then you can stand and go easy. That's what I mean. So if you're climbing a lot, I want you to teach yourself how to use standing as a recovery, as well as a powerful way to get up those really steep grades. So standing can be two things. It can be like you use your whole body, you power up it, it's like really hard, or you stand and just kind of like on a stair stepper, you're just doing something else and your body gets a bit of a rest.
That's Pagacha. That's what he does. He stands up on those crazy climbs and then just like chills. And I'm going, how is he doing that? But that's really interesting, actually, to think about it like that, and to try different things on your rides. Like you're saying, train your weaknesses. It also mixes it up, right? Like if you're doing a long climb and get 20 minutes, 15 minutes in, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm only halfway through this climb.
Yeah, like
what can I do?
I've done these fun challenges, but because I hated standing, I didn't know how to do it, and so I was teaching myself to stand, and then it got easier and easier, and I kind of clicked, and then I would make these challenges of like, could I do this entire hill climb standing? So I went from like 1 minute to 5 minutes, and then I went to like 20 minutes, and it's fun. It's like a fun little challenge.
It's like a fun game. That's cool. So we've got 6 minutes. Do we have something we want to end with? I think I've hit all the questions we had about climbing specifically.
I wanted to talk about fueling, but like we cannot do that in 5 minutes, so I'm not even going to open that door.
I mean, it's up to you how much you want to go over. If you want to go over 5 minutes and talk about fueling for 10, But it's
I could
totally
do
up to
that.
you. Okay. I mean, I'll keep track of the time and I'll let you know when we're getting close to
Okay.
7:05. So we'll go over a little bit here and talk about fueling. And you want to end with fueling?
Yeah, let's just do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if anybody has questions about fueling specifically, and nutrition, we're gonna end with that. And then I guess if there's anything else that we did not touch on and you're on the live stream, feel free to drop that question in the chat. And if we aren't able to answer it right now, then we'll see what we can do, or maybe be able to provide some resources for that specific question. But if you have anything fuel related or nutrition related, that's where we're going to go next before we wrap it up. Take it
Okay,
away.
great. So, basically, the question was like general nutrition, planning nutrition around the ride, outside of the ride, like daily nutrition.
Okay.
Is there any difference between like a 50-mile event versus a 100-mile event? All of this stuff. So I'm going to go over some general nutrition rules. Now, keep in mind, it's all personal. Like everyone's different. What works for one person might not work for you. So the important thing is you need to train your fueling just as much as you train your fitness. And so you need to, before your event comes, I want you training your fueling at least 3 months out, because it can take a while
Wow.
to figure it out. So at least 3 months. Also keep in mind that fueling and strategy will change with the weather. Okay. And that makes it really tough. Fueling can also change with you as you age, particularly women as they go through menopause and perimenopause. Like our guts are changing, and I've seen it personally in athletes. They use this fueling strategy for years, and then suddenly they're like nauseous on the rides using the same exact thing, and they're like, what happened? So that can happen to men too. Like bodies change. Okay, so just because something works now does not mean it's going to work forever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, as far as fueling outside of riding, I am not a nutritionist. I'm not going to advise you on that, but there is a good app. It's called Fuelin, so Fuelin. There are lots of apps out there. This one is really good for athletes, and it does integrate with some training programs like Training Peaks. So look into that if you want to know about daily food intake. For all food things like to buy and eat on the bike, thefeed.com, THEFEED.com. You have all options there. It's a great resource to just kind of see what's out there. Now, okay, so for your rides, I want you to go in with a full tank. So within 2 hours of a ride, before that ride, I want you to have a meal or a snack with at least 60 grams of carbs. Okay? You can have more than that. If you are doing a ride and you're like, I'm not quite sure I ate within the 2 hours, I don't know if I got enough carbs, just top up. Before you go on that ride, top up with like a banana, piece of toast, a muffin. Think carbs, like quick carbs. Okay? For anything longer than an hour, regardless of whether you ate before or not, if you're going past an hour of training, you need more food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your food's only going to last you for an hour. Then you need to refuel. So for every hour past that initial hour, we're assuming that initial hour you already fueled for that. For every hour past that initial hour, I want you to get at least 200 calories. Now that is the minimum.
Wow.
If
I
you
feel like
weigh,
it went up. Sorry, just want to say it went up from what it used to be.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Okay. And 200 is like, if you weigh 170 pounds, you could probably do 300. You know, it's kind of like you need to figure out what works for you. Within those calories, I would say make sure at least 60 grams of carbs per hour. Okay, so you want these very carb heavy. Now, some people are going up to like over 100 grams of carbs per hour. If your gut can handle that and you want to do that, fine. There is a tipping point where a lot of people cannot handle that. So 60 to 80 grams of carbs per hour is kind of like the golden standard. You want to dribble these in. You don't want to suddenly eat everything all at once, because what's going to happen if you eat everything all at once, all the blood's going to go to your stomach to digest that food, and then you have no blood in your muscles and you're going to bonk.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do bonk, what you need to do is like literally take a gel or a quick carby thing to get you out of that bonk, because eventually, like, that's a quick bonk. Like you're digesting within 30 minutes, all that digestion, it'll be back in your system. But to get you through that 30 minutes of food bonk, just take another little gel or something. Okay. Now, in summer, oh, actually, okay, let's talk about types of food. So you can take real food. That is my number one recommended, like a sandwich. That's real food. A bar kind of counts as real food. Okay, those are better to eat if you can. I prefer my athletes not to exist on gels and blocks and chews. Okay, but a lot of athletes, like if you're racing and stuff, you can't eat a sandwich in a race. So what do? Well,
want to bet?
I wish I could.
Chris Howell says he can. He can eat a burrito.
That's awesome. I'm so jealous of those people. Okay. Like I literally, my stomach gets upset. So I need to rely on all the sort of crappy foods, but they work, right? So I will use the blocks, I will use gels, and then I will drink a lot of calories. Okay. So you kind of have two food choices. You have real food and then like gels and blocks, the sugary stuff. Real food is preferred. Gels and blocks are okay. Just don't do that like every day. Then type of drink. Okay, this can be tough. In winter, you can kind of get by with anything. You can drink anything, you're going to be fine. Your three types of drinks, I divide it into like water / just electrolytes. This would be like a noon tablet that has like 5 calories. So that's a great option. I actually recommend that over just plain water, but there are times when you might want plain water. The next level of drink is like the 80 to 100 calorie or 120 calorie electrolyte drink, like Scratch electrolyte mix. That's good. That'll for like an hour, that'll give you your electrolytes, but keep in mind it's only 120 calories, so you're going to need to supplement with some food. You're not up to that 200 calorie zone yet. Okay. Now, the third type of drink is like the heavy carb mix, and this is going to have 200 or more calories per bottle. Okay. And if you go on the feed, you're going to see all these 3 types. Okay. This is a great option. If you're like, I just want my liquid food, I can drink 1 bottle per hour. That's 200 calories, that's 60 grams of carbs. I'm done. I don't need to think about it. But in summer, this is when that gets dangerous. You can actually dehydrate because this is too concentrated.
Okay.
So
like too much
that's when you would need the water or the electrolytes, or like, this is why you need to figure it out, and a coach can kind of help you get through that. But that's sort of like the really quick and dirty of fueling.
So a couple of questions people have. How much water should you be drinking when you're eating? So say, do you have kind of like a easy, I don't know, like equation for that? If you have 200 well, you're not doing it all at once. If you have a gel, how much water should you drink with that gel to help to aid with digestion? Because that's something that I think people have trouble with, right? That digesting.
Yeah. So like certain gels you do not need to drink water with, but the gels that you do need to drink water, honestly, I just take like 3 swigs and call it a day. I'm not that particular about it.
Yeah. Okay. Another question we have specifically about electrolytes, and actually specifically about cramping. Where is that at? Even with electrolytes, I have issues with cramping after long or hard rides. Any recommendations? And that's Jeff.
This is a tough one because cramping can sometimes just be exertion and doesn't have anything to do with electrolytes. Now, keep in mind our area, Jeff, I don't know where you live, but where I live in the DC area, super hot and humid. So a lot of my athletes that I coach, I recommend they go with the super salty mixes. So typical electrolytes are going to have like 300 milligrams of sodium. The super salty ones can have up to 1,000. And if you drink 1 per hour, that's like 1,000 milligrams of salt per hour. I've had athletes do very well with stopping cramping by adding more sodium.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if that will be your solution, but keep in mind, if you're in the very hot, humid environments, you might need more than the recommended.
Hmm. And now, when you say that sometimes cramping is exertion, are you just saying muscle fatigue versus, okay. So it's hard. Is there a way you can know if it's that versus, um, some sort of electrolyte deficiency or hydration type thing?
Yeah. Um, if it's like, if you're getting it on both sides, I've read that that is usually an electrolyte thing.
So if
It's
it's
like
left and right,
systemic.
like, okay.
But if it's like one side, then maybe that is just more muscular. Another thing to note, like if you take electrolytes and it goes away, then yeah, it was probably because of electrolytes.
All right, we're at 8:05, so we probably need to start wrapping it up. Unless there's anything else you want to add, Jill, or any resources you'd like to provide, links. You mentioned a few. You said Fuelin and the feed are really good for fuel. Is there anything that you
For all
also want to add
women,
to that?
the two books by Stacy Sims are great. Recommend those. What Next Level and Roar.
Yes, people talk about Roar a lot.
Yeah.
Is it Stacy Stacey? Do you know? I can't remember.
No, I think it's STACY.
Okay. Sims, two M's.
Maybe one.
Gosh, I should know this. Sorry. I think I spelled that right, but I could probably look it up. KJ will probably jump in there and correct me if I'm wrong. So everyone's saying thank you so much, Jill. Fabulous session. Thanks, Coach. Thank you both. Thanks for putting this on. This is great. And again, if you would like to learn more about Coach Jill, you can visit her website at jillpattersoncycling.com. Find her on social media at Jill Patterson Cycling. Reach out if you're interested in. Are you taking any new clients right now, Jill?
So I have different packages and I offer both monthly and hourlies. Currently the monthlies are full. I have a wait list for that if you want to be put on that, but I always have availability for hourlies. And so you could just do one session and we go over like kind of what we did here, but specific to you. We can answer any questions you have, just one session, or I have athletes who do that hourly like once a month, so we plan out a training program for them, and so they're kind of on their own in between the sessions, but they're following the personalized training plan, and then we meet the next month to go over it and give them the next month.
Great.
So those are available.
Awesome. So if you're interested, go to jillpattersoncycling.com. You can contact Jill. I think it's Jill Patterson Coaching at gmail.com, and ask about the different training plans. If you're interested in just doing some kind of hourly session, getting more information specific to you, that is a great resource. This is a good time of year for it. And I'm sure Jill would love to hear from you. So thank you so much, Jill, for joining us.
Thanks, Alex. And thanks
yeah.
everyone who came and listened.
Yeah, we had a good group tonight, and this on YouTube, you'll be able to rewatch. We'll share the link on both of our pages, and with the DKWTS group. So yeah, share it, tell your friends, and if there's any other questions, like we said, reach out to Jill directly. Jill will also be at Cat Camp this year in March, and often comes to a lot of our Dirty Kitten events, so you'll probably see her around. She's joining us for DKWTS a little bit as well, in between her own training and racing. So thank you again, and good luck with everything and all of your training and recovery.
Thank you.
All right. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see you on Sunday for our regular live stream. Keep riding dirty.